Welcome to the woods. Not quite as bright as it usually is. The leaves are turning brown. I've got a bit of a cold, so if I sound a bit strange, that's the reason. And I've had a busy morning. At this time of year, it's important that I prepare for the months ahead, for winter. So I've stripped down my water pump, which pumps the water from my collection system into the cabin, and rebuilt it. I have been up on the roof, swept for the first time this year, swept all the solar panels and give them a clean, which is important because it doesn't take many leaves to cover them, and when they're covered they provide no power. So I've done an oil change and a filter change on the generator, just getting things ready. And I wanted to talk today about two subjects really: self-sufficiency and the importance of that, and tribe. So the first one, self-sufficiency. I've quite obviously spoken about this many times on different videos, but I think we're seeing today why self-sufficiency is important, and not necessarily on a personal level, but on a national level. We all understand the situation Germany, Europe, and ourselves as well. We understand the situation we're in with our reliance on other nations and other people for our energy. And that allows the situation to arise where, because you're not in control, they can shut it off at any time. The same could be said for food. And I've mentioned before that here in the UK, in the 1980s, we produced 80%, over 80% of the food that we consumed. And if we had pushed forward and encouraged farming and looked at better methods, moving from monoculture to permaculture, looking at ways which are working with nature and not against it, we could be at 100% today. Now obviously that becomes increasingly difficult as your population is increased annually by an influx of other people. But we could have been at 100%. Instead, we're falling to nearly 40, which is not safe. Supply lines can be fractured, disrupted, which would leave us with no food, or not enough food. We've seen what's happened with the Nord 2 pipeline, which supplied gas to Germany and therefore Europe in general, including the UK. And because there's no gas coming through, Germany is looking at a winter with some very, very cold people. Some won't make it through. And this is because they were not self-sufficient. On a personal level, can you be self-sufficient as an individual? Well, yes, you can. It's quite difficult, but completely possible. I'm not at that level, but I think I'm much further down the road than most others. And this gives me many, many more options to do with my time and my money. You see, self-sufficiency is dependent upon what you need. And for a very long time, we've been told that we need lots and lots and lots of things. You need that expensive watch. You need 2 weeks in Marbella. You need the finest foods. And you need McDonald's, Netflix, and Tesco's. Not to mention Amazon and Uber. And the fact is, you don't need those things. What you need is shelter, food, and heat, and water. If you can provide those things for yourself, you could say you're self-sufficient. But it is those luxuries that tempt us, because that's what we've been taught. That's what we've been indoctrinated to believe is important. And those things aren't. You can quite simply become self-sufficient with food. If you grow some vegetables for you and your family, grow some potatoes, grow some tomatoes, you can grow vegetables, you can grow salad, quite simply. Mushrooms. They grow here in the woods like everywhere, but they're easy enough to grow. I get a lot of people telling me I haven't got a garden, I can't grow anything. There's lots of things you can grow in your house, in a bucket. Plant a potato in a bucket in your kitchen. You'll be amazed when in 2-3 months' time you've got a bucket full of potatoes, not a bucket full of mud. These things we can do. You can collect rainwater, and then you can filter it, and you now are self-sufficient in water. And I understand that not everyone is going to be happy with water and vegetables. You may want some meat on that plate. And again, you may have to look at land in order to raise livestock, but that's doable. Maybe 4 or 5 of you club together, buy a paddock, keep some pigs, keep some goats, and now you've got milk and you've got meat. You could breed rabbits. So there's lots of things we could do, and it's important to have control of your life, that you at least think about these things. Because if you're not self-sufficient, you're reliant on somebody else. You're reliant on your job to pay you enough money so that you can buy the products you need. Or you're reliant on someone or a state to supply them for you, to give them to you. And both of those things can disappear. You could lose your job. Welfare might stop. But if you're doing it for yourself, there's not a lot they can do to you. It will give you personal choice and personal freedom. And if you pull that out, going from an individual basis to a larger group of people, let's say 10, you'll find that self-sufficiency actually becomes easier. And you'll find that with those 10 people, more can be done. There'll be people within that group who are very good at some things, and they'll probably end up doing more of those. I might be much better at planting vegetables and getting them to grow than the chap next door, who's very good rearing livestock, and the next bloke who's very good at tinkering with electrics and repairing things. So between that group of 10, suddenly you're covering more bases and the workload is split. And here's the funny thing. If you lived in a group of 10 of you, do you think you would have to sell the stuff that you'd grown to your neighbours? Or if everyone helped, could you grow enough for the whole group? And if you could grow enough for the whole group, then it's just divided up. And sometimes there would be more in an abundant year, and sometimes there would be less. And the same goes for the livestock and the milk. And if you've got someone who's really good at mechanics and good at fixing things, then he'll probably end up doing more of that than maybe you. But he wouldn't be charging you because you don't charge him for your vegetables. And the other chap doesn't charge him for the meat. So you end up with a completely self-sufficient group that no longer has a need for money. Now you can start to think about how that can be expanded. Maybe to a national level. Because today we've reached a point where money, as well as being a tool used to control populations, has become the reason we don't move forward. Money has become the reason we don't do something. Could we irrigate this dry area of the country? Yes, but it would be too expensive. Is a slightly retarded answer, but one you will hear time and time again. It maybe needs to be rephrased, which is, have we got sufficient manpower and natural resources to complete that task? And if the answer is yes, then it should be done. There is no need for money to come into that equation. See, the truth is no one wants money. They think they want money, but they don't. They want the goods and services that money can buy. And if you can provide the goods and services for your own people, where's the need? So, I'm sure a lot of you will have pushback against that idea. I understand that. But I think it's important that these discussions, these types of ideas, are at least being held on the right. Because whatever they come up with, whatever ideas they have for your future, it won't be in your interest. So we need to design something different. And those 10 people I just spoke of, that is tribe. A group of like-minded people who have a shared history, a shared language, that work together for the good of themselves and the good of the tribe. When I did some research into finance and money, a few years back now, I did a little bit of research into societies and tribes that flourish, that don't use money. And it was interesting. And there's still quite a few of them. And the one thing that did strike me was that they rated a man's wealth, although that word was rarely used, but they rated a man's wealth not on monetary terms, because they didn't use money, but a man was considered wealthy when he had a large family. And that's something we could definitely get behind. So I think the idea of tribalism, of people with a shared history, language, ideas, in a specific location, is something we need to explore. And that might start quite small, but it has the opportunity of being recognised as a viable alternative. And can therefore grow. Let me know what you think, you lot. Today was a bit of just a ramble, really. But it's stuff I've been thinking about recently, stuff I've thought about in the past, and it's easy to get hung up on all of the negative things that are happening in the world today, and all of the negative things that are happening in this country. So we need to start looking at solutions and ways forward. And I hope you've got ideas as well, because through discussion like this, through sharing ideas, through talking, that's where positive steps towards a better future begins. Look after yourselves, you lot. I'll speak to you soon.